The day I found out my wife was cheating on me, I was grocery shopping. I know that sounds absurd. People find out these things in dramatic ways: a text message left open, a stranger's call, a confession over dinner when the silence finally becomes heavier than the secret. Mine happened between the produce aisle and the dairy section. I had a basket with eggs and Greek yogurt and a rotisserie chicken. I found out my marriage was over while holding a rotisserie chicken. Welcome back. My name is Jonathan. I'm 52 years old. I was married for 19 years. And this is the story of how I found out, what I did about it, and the thing that happened at the end that I never saw coming but that I will carry for the rest of my life. Get comfortable. This one takes a minute to unfold, but it unfolds completely. My wife's name is Patricia. We met in our early 30s at a conference. She was in marketing. I was in operations for the same company, which meant we were not technically colleagues, but close enough that we had to be careful. We were careful for about 3 months. Then we stopped being careful and started being together. 19 years. 2 daughters, now 17 and 14. A house we renovated over 4 summers. A dog named Clarence who is 11 years old and sleeps at the foot of the bed and has no idea that the world changed. I want to say something about Patricia before I say anything else about what happened. She is intelligent. She is organized. She is the parent who remembers the school forms and the dentist appointments and the names of all of our daughter's friends. She ran our household with a precision that I benefited from enormously and probably did not appreciate enough. I want to say that clearly, because what happened is not a story about a bad person doing bad things. It is a story about a person making a choice, and then another choice, and then 17 months of choices, and what happens when those choices come into the light. The grocery store. Saturday morning. Patricia had gone to her book club. She has been in this book club for 6 years, 12 women. They meet on the second Saturday of every month. I know the names of most of them. I have met several. I did not have any reason to question the book club. I was in the dairy section when my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it. People send texts to wrong numbers all the time. I almost put the phone back in my pocket and grabbed the yogurt and went home. I read it instead. The text said, "Patricia left her scarf at mine last night. Can you let her know?" David. I stood in the dairy aisle for a long time. Patricia had been at book club last night. Book club is on the second Saturday of the month. It was the second Saturday of the month. She had left at 7:15 and come home at 11, which is about right. She had kissed me on the cheek when she came in. She smelled like the restaurant they sometimes go to after, or she smelled like someone's apartment, and I couldn't tell the difference because I had no reason to look for it. I did not respond to the text. I put the phone in my pocket. I bought the eggs and the yogurt and the rotisserie chicken, and I drove home and I unloaded the groceries, and I did not say a word. I have thought about this moment many times, why I didn't say anything right then. I think the answer is that I needed to know the shape of the thing before I responded to it. I am an operations person. I do not react to incomplete information. I build the picture first. So, I built the picture. The first thing I did was think carefully about the last 17 months, because as soon as I asked myself the question, when did something change, the answer came quickly and it had a date attached to it. 17 months ago, Patricia had joined a professional development group, a networking organization for women in marketing leadership. She went to events 2 or 3 times a month. She had started coming home later on certain evenings. She had become harder to read in ways I had attributed to stress. She had also started to seem lighter, not happier exactly, lighter, the way someone seems when they are carrying something that feels good to them, even if they shouldn't be carrying it. I had noticed. I had not asked. The second thing I did was look at our phone plan. I am the account holder. I can pull up call logs through the carrier's website. I did this on a Sunday afternoon while Patricia was at the grocery store where she had gone to get the things I had forgotten, which I thought was almost funny but mostly wasn't. There was a number that appeared regularly, multiple times a week, calls that lasted between 8 and 40 minutes. The number had started appearing 17 months ago. I did not call the number. I searched it. It was registered to a David Okafor. He had a professional profile online. He was 47. He worked in marketing strategy. He was, according to his professional page, a founding member of the networking organization Patricia had joined 17 months ago. I looked at his photograph for a long time. He seemed like a reasonable person, which is the thing that nobody tells you. The person your spouse chooses is usually a reasonable-seeming person, not a monster, just someone who was there and was willing and made it easy to make the choices that followed. I called my brother that evening. His name is Michael, and he is 56, and he has been divorced once, and has the specific knowledge of someone who has been through a fire and knows where all the exits are. I told him what I had found. He listened. When I was done, he said, "Jonathan, before you do anything else, I want you to talk to an attorney." I said it's too soon for that. He said it is never too soon to understand your position. I called an attorney on Monday. Her name is Karen Hadley. She has practiced family law for 24 years, and she said, in our first conversation, something I have thought about many times since. She said, "Jonathan, the decisions you make in the next 2 weeks will shape the next 2 years. Take them slowly and take them with information." I took them slowly. Over the following 3 weeks, I built a complete picture. Call logs. A bank account I had not known about Patricia had opened it 14 months ago. Charges I could trace to restaurants and a hotel I had never been to and a weekend getaway she had told me was a conference. The conference was not a conference. The weekend she had spent at a conference in March was a weekend she had spent in a city 3 hours away. I know this because the credit card charges placed her there. She had told me the conference was in our own city and that she would be home each night but busy. She had come home each night. She had been 3 hours away and come home and told me about sessions she had attended. I sat with all of this for a long time. Karen said, "Jonathan, what do you want to do?" I said, "I need to think about my daughters." She said, "Tell me about them." I told her. 17 and 14, both doing well in school. The older one is applying to colleges in the fall. The younger one has been in therapy for anxiety, something she has managed well, something that is fragile. I told Karen that whatever I did had to account for the specific reality of these 2 specific people. Karen said, "Then here is what I want you to consider. Confrontation before you have a legal plan often produces an emotional response from the other party that is not in your interest. You are in a position of information right now. That is a form of advantage. I want you to use it carefully." I used it carefully. I did not confront Patricia. I spent 2 more weeks preparing. I moved a portion of our savings to an account in my name. I documented everything Karen asked me to document. I made a list of assets and liabilities. I engaged a financial advisor to look at our joint investments. And then I asked Patricia to sit down with me on a Tuesday evening after the girls were in bed. She sat across from me at the kitchen table. She looked comfortable. She had no reason not to. I said, "Patricia, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen to the whole thing before you respond." She said, "Okay." I said, "I know about David. I have known for about 6 weeks. I have spent those 6 weeks talking to an attorney and a financial advisor and documenting our assets. I am not asking you whether it's true. I am telling you that I know it's true, and I am telling you that I have a legal plan in place. What I want to know from you is whether you want to try to save this marriage or whether you want to proceed with a dissolution." She looked at me for a long time. Then she started to cry. I let her. I did not move. I waited. She said, "How long have you known?" I said, 6 weeks. She said, "You didn't say anything for 6 weeks." I said, "I needed to understand the full picture before I said anything." She cried for a while. Then she said, "I'm so sorry." I said, "I believe you. I also need an answer to my question." She said, "I don't know." I said, "Then I need you to find out. Because I have 2 daughters who are going to need stability regardless of what we decide, and I need us to make that decision from a place of honesty rather than a place of panic." We spent 3 months in couples counseling. Patricia ended the relationship with David. She told me this, and I believe it was true, because I was still monitoring the phone records and the calls stopped. She was honest in the counseling sessions in a way that was hard to watch and also necessary. At the end of 3 months, we had not saved the marriage. What we had done was end it in a way that did not destroy what needed to remain intact for our daughters. The divorce was filed 18 months ago. It is final. Patricia and I share custody of our daughters on a schedule that our older one helped design, which was her idea and which I thought was one of the best ideas anyone in the situation had. My daughters are doing well. The younger one's anxiety has been managed carefully through the transition. She is in therapy and doing the work. She told me last month that she was proud of how I handled it. She is 14 and she is wiser than I was at 40. Here is what I want to say about the rotisserie chicken. I still buy them. I still go to that grocery store. I walk past the dairy section every time and I think about the Saturday morning when everything changed and I was holding a basket with eggs and yogurt and I found out my marriage was over from a text about a scarf. What I know now, that I didn't know then, is that the marriage had been over for some time before that text arrived. The text didn't end anything. It just told me something that was already true. And knowing the truth, even when it costs you everything you thought you had, is always better than not knowing. Always. Here is what I want to say about the 3 weeks I spent not saying anything. People ask me, when I tell this story, why I waited. Why I did not confront Patricia the moment I got home from the grocery store. Why I drove home with the eggs and the yogurt and the rotisserie chicken and unloaded everything and said nothing. The honest answer is 2 things. The first I have already told you. I am an operations person, and I needed the full picture before I responded to a piece of it. The second is harder to say and I think more true. The second is that part of me was not ready for the 19 years to be over. And so I gave myself 3 weeks of still being married to someone I loved without the complication of what I now knew. I don't regret that. I think it was a reasonable thing for a human being to do. What I do not regret at all is building the legal picture during those 3 weeks rather than using them to talk myself out of what I knew. Karen, my attorney, said something in our second meeting that I have thought about often. She said, "Jonathan, the people who come to me having waited without acting almost always wish they had acted sooner. The people who acted immediately almost always wish they had waited to understand more. You did something unusual. You waited and you acted at the same time. That is, I think, the thing I am most proud of in how I handled this. I want to talk about my daughters, because they are the part of this story that matters most and the part I am most careful about. The older one, who is 17 now, handled the separation with the specific pragmatism of a young woman who has spent her life watching her parents solve problems. She asked me, in the first week after I told them, whether she could still apply to the college she wanted even if it would require financial recalibration. I said yes. She said okay and went back to her application essay. That is who she is. The younger one, who is 14 and whose anxiety has been managed carefully and who is fragile in ways that are also strengths, took longer. She went quiet in a way that I know from experience is the way she processes things that are too large to process immediately. She came to me 6 weeks after I told them and she said, "Dad, are you going to be okay?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Are you sure?" I said, "I am working toward being sure. That's the honest answer." She said, "That's good enough." She has been in therapy for 2 years and she knows the difference between a performed okay and a working toward one. I am glad she knows the difference. I am glad she asked. Here is the thing about the rotisserie chicken that I have not said yet. On the evening after I found out, after I had unloaded the groceries and said nothing, I made dinner. I put the rotisserie chicken on a plate and I sliced it and I made a salad and I called the girls down and we sat at the kitchen table, the 4 of us, Patricia and me and our daughters, and we ate dinner together. Patricia asked about the older one's college essay. The younger one complained about a teacher. I asked about a project they were both involved in. We ate the chicken. I sat at that table and I looked at my family and I thought, this is the last evening we will ever have that is simply this. Whatever I do next changes what this was. I cannot undo the knowledge I have, but I can have this one last dinner before it changes. We had it. I am glad we had it. I will carry it. The marriage is over. The dinners are not over. We have dinner together, Patricia and the girls and I, several times a week when the custody schedule allows it, not because we are pretending anything, because our daughters need to see that the ending of a marriage is not the ending of a family. I believe that. I am working toward making it fully true. That is the honest answer, and it is good enough. Thank you for being here. Subscribe if you haven't. I'll see you in the next one.